welcome to The Pulse. As you know, every week we're bringing exciting guests into the show or onto the show, and this week is no different. We've got somebody who, in a lot of ways, honestly, as I said, I've done talk radio for years. This is somebody who I used to watch and go, I think I want that job. Now, he's been involved in talk radio, but in recent years has been acting, has been an advocate, has been a businessman, is in a really powerful and important movie right now. We are joined by Mr. Montel Williams. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on The Pulse.
Thanks for having me, sir.
As I said, you were one of those people, for those of us who were doing talk radio or wanted to do TV, kind of said, okay, like Montel's doing it. We can step out there. Do people tell you that you kind of inspired them through your history?
Well, yeah, I did have a show that was kind of in everybody's living rooms invited into living rooms for almost 17 years across the nation. And it goes back to when, really talk began. So, I kind of take a little joy out of being one of the originators of the genre.
We always like to start on The Pulse, especially with people who have done so many things in so many different capacities, to ask people to define themselves. Like you're, military background and history maker and come from a history making family, as I was reading about your father. But when people ask you to define you, how do you do that?
For me, the definition is I will only live up to or down to my own expectations.
So you don't really choose to define yourself, or you just kind of go case by case basis, or it depends on what you're taking on?
I hate the idea that we have to be pigeonholed. I mean, that's part of the issue that's going on, I think, in America today, is that, I had to be pigeonholed as a talk show host. I had to be pigeonholed as an actor. I had to be pigeonholed as an author. I had to be pigeonholed as an entrepreneur. I had to be pigeonholed as an advocate. There's no pigeonhole. I do what I choose to do at the time based on how I feel. And I will do that until the day I drop.
Is that something, you said that's one of the issues with America? You think too many of us kind of get stuck in somebody else's definition? Or
Absolutely. I think you take a look at our politics right now. You look at what we have going on in Washington, D.C. There's too many people living up to or down to the expectations of others rather than living up to their own and fulfilling what they promised the people that they had elected them they would do. And that's be an advocate for them individually. Instead, now we have people who are advocating for some unknown cause, and I can't define what it is. It's not a Republican, it's not a Democrat, it's not an independent. It's some stupidity that someone has put into a bucket and said, well, you have to fill XYZ blocks or have to fill, the color of the book so that you look like this book or this book or this book. No, I think it's time that we started acting as individuals, not narcissistically, but understanding what our value is. I mean, I'm blessed. I'm a very blessed person who has a brain that literally works on both sides. You know what I mean? I graduated from college with an engineering degree, and had I decided to become a solid engineer, then I would be a solid engineer today. That was the only thing I wanted to do. I also, ran a program at one of the most conservative colleges in the country, United States Naval Academy. I ran a program called the Midshipman in Modern Music Bands because I was a musician and I was an actor, and I wanted to feed that other side of me. And so, I don't think there's anything wrong with, I'm not a jack of all trades. I am a master of myself.
Have you always been? I mean, publicly we know of some of your public stuff, but has that always been you?
That's been me since I was a child. I mean, I literally, I'm a product of busing. I'm a kid who went to school and, in high school, I literally participated in politics. I was on my own student government. I was elected class president twice, junior year, senior year. I was a student on the Board of Education in Anne Arundel County. I was a participant in the Maryland Association of Student Councils, the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils. I participated in multiple things that dealt with going to Washington, D.C. But then at the exact same time, I played in a band, and I won Best Actor at my school. I played football, I played basketball, I ran track, so it's not that I couldn't make up my mind. It's just that I didn't feel a limit, and I didn't feel as if someone was going to tell me who I was going to be. And I graduated from the Naval Academy and went into the Navy. So the choices I made, and I became a special duty intelligence officer in the Navy. I went to speak Russian at the Defense Language Institute. So, you know, I define who I am rather than have anybody define me.
Next on The Pulse, when the cameras aren't there and nobody's really around, Montel shares with us what truly motivates him.
I don't get up every day and say to myself, I want to go inspire people. I go to bed every night and I say, what did I do today? And it's worth talking about tomorrow.
Welcome back to The Pulse. Today we're spending some time with Montel Williams and finding out that his story is much deeper than many of us may have expected. From a historic standpoint and breaking down barriers and not being defined, your father, first African-American fire chief in Baltimore,
Yes.
made history.
First African-American head of the fire school in Baltimore. First, and my father literally passed the chief's exam 5 years in a row with the highest score that the city had seen, and was passed over because, like most major cities in America, African Americans were not allowed to ascend to the rank of fire chiefs.
Am I reading correctly? You were the first Black Marine in officer training program in the Naval Academy. So you were making history also.
No, I was the first Marine,
Okay.
prior enlisted Marine, who went through the Naval Academy and got commissioned as a naval officer. Okay. It's a very clear distinction. There were some Marines that went through the Naval Academy, the prep school, and the Naval Academy before me, but they all went back in the Marine Corps. I'm the first to go into the Navy. I received a Special Duty Intelligence Officer commission, went on to then go to the Defense Language Institute for Russian, and became a cryptologist in the Navy.
A lot of people know you, again, from your public life. Some may say it's surprising that it kind of led you to talk radio and talk shows, and acting, what have you. It doesn't sound like you're surprised at all. You just were doing you.
What I was doing, and I was doing this taking my own leave, taking my own personal time to go do this around the country, because I thought there was a need for us to recognize, let young people recognize, especially African Americans recognize that, we don't have to be defined by somebody else. Back when I started speaking, it was back in the day when they would run around the country saying one in four Black men will wind up dead or in jail. And I didn't think that was a paradigm that needed to be openly discussed. I wanted to make sure they understand that, if there's 1 in 4 that could be dead or in jail, there's 3 or 4 that are making it. And so you can be one of those 3 or 4 that make it.
Has that been inspiring people?
I don't get up every day and say to myself, I want to go inspire people. I go to bed every night and I say, what did I do today that's worth talking about tomorrow? And that's what's important to me. We spend so little time on this planet, and our tenure is really as insignificant as you might believe. I want to make sure that my time spent here, for me, when I'm laying there taking my last breath, I feel as if I've done something.
Was there a time when you're like, here's my path, here's what I want to do, and here's how I'm going to inspire people?
When I was in the 2nd grade, I was writing stories, and it just so happened that in the county that I lived in, they would pick a story once a week from about 5 different schools and read it on the radio. And, I fortunately had a couple of mine, 3 of them, 2 to 3 of them picked and selected to read on the radio. And so I was preparing to write another one for Christmas and thought I was going to write the story that was the most fantastic story in the world. And I submitted that paper right there to my teacher. And 2 days later, this is maybe, a week and a half before Christmas, 2 days later, I get my paper back and there's a big red F on the top of my paper. And I looked at my paper, and all over the paper, there was one word that was circled in red with a minus beside it. So I took the paper back to the teacher and I said, ma'am, I don't understand. What did I do wrong? And she looked at the paper and she looked at me and she said, that's the reason why you people will never be anything in life. Wow. You only have one thing on your mind. What word do you think I spelled wrong that got that consternation from that lady? Your listeners are probably going, I don't understand. Well, let me tell you what it was. I spelled the word wrapped, R-A-P-E-D.
Wow.
I should have spelled it W-R-A-P-P-E-D.
Wow.
It wasn't until I hit the 6th grade, when I finally had some knowledge of what I was reading in dictionaries, that I pulled that paper out and I looked that word up in a dictionary, and I realized that this woman said, that's why you people will never have anything, will never be anything in life because you only have one thing on your mind. This woman looked at a third grade boy and thought that I was talking about rape. Are you kidding me? And it was that day that I said to myself, no one will ever define me but me, period.
Wow. Do you think that in some ways inspired all of this diversity of your path? Like I was going to ask you, with this background that you're talking about and all of these skills and talents, what would lead you, to TV, to hosting a TV talk show? But do you think just proving, I can do whatever, was that it?
I think that's probably what helps to define me even today. I mean, like today, I'm working on probably 6, 7 different initiatives as we sit here because people that I'm working on things like from mesenchymal exosomes, deep stem cell research to working on things like RTM program, which is remittance of traumatic memories, which is a program that is listed as one of the only true cures for PTSD in the world. I'm working on advanced research in neuromodulation. I'm working on projects. I work in cannabis. I work in multiple things that literally, again, no one is going to define me but me.
Next on The Pulse, Montel shares with us how he hopes the new movie he's participating in can help us all come together to solve problems.
Let's force it. Let's make people sit down and not only come and see a movie, but then have a discussion about it after. Let's just put all your views out. It doesn't matter what they are. Just put them out there so that we can have, intellectual intercourse.
Welcome back. And let's get right back to the discussion we're having today with Montel Williams. Right now, one of your latest issues, challenges, successes was participating in this George Floyd movie. Tell me why you would want to participate in that movie, because you've been outspoken about this.
I mean, it's just like, I think almost everyone can remember where they were when the OJ verdict came out. Almost everyone can remember where they were when Martin Luther King was shot. I think everybody can almost remember where they were when, Richard Nixon stood on the White House steps and threw his hands up in the air. I mean, there are pivotal points in time in America's history where I think we remember where we were and what our emotions were at that moment. And this movie reflected on a pivotal time. I believe that George Floyd's murder could have been and should have been a pivotal moment in America. As we get further and further away from it, I'm starting to think that it's not as pivotal as we thought it was. But I wanted to participate and take a look at how it affected so many people so differently. And that's what I think Terrence the King captured in this movie. So that's why I wanted to be a part.
So the movie goes around and there's some conversations associated with it. Some of the people, why? Is this one of those things people need to sit down and have additional conversation in order to, to make some change or understand it?
I think we do. I mean, it's so bizarre that we as a nation now almost feel as if you can't talk about the past. There's legislation being enacted all over America to try to stop people from talking about the past. I mean, this whole thing about, trying to whitewash American history, as if things didn't happen that did happen because people are embarrassed by the past in America. It's a sad commentary of who we are because, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
I would agree with you on some levels that I was more encouraged immediately following the George Floyd situation. And now as time passes, you kind of wonder where people are with it. But do you feel like people are more at least encouraged to have the discussions, or are we shying away from that too?
I think we're shying away from it, to be absolutely honest with you. I'm so proud of the fact that Terrence has decided to try to force the issue. Let's force it. Let's make people sit down, not only come and see a movie, but then have a discussion about it after. Let's just put all your views out. It doesn't matter what they are. Just put them out there so that we can have, intellectual intercourse. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I feel like asking you what you're working on next is a constantly evolving discussion. But so you've worked with first CBD and then medical cannabis for quite some time. That was as a result, of your initial diagnosis of MS, or just something you were already
Yeah,
interested
I've
in?
been, long before cannabis was the green rush, long before there was conversations being had about it nationally, long before the Farm Bill, back in 2000,
Yeah.
2001, I came out publicly out about my support for cannabis as a medicinal agent, um, and as a medicinal option that should be in the quiver of every doctor in America. And why? So again, I started in this industry back then because when I realized how effective it was as another weapon in my arsenal, another medication in my arsenal to battle the ravages of the illness that I had been inflicted with,
Mhm.
I went around the country trying to make sure that other patients like myself had safe access to the same thing. So I've testified before everybody from all over the country to ensure that people have access to safe medication.
After decades on camera and various career choices, coming up next, Montel explains what really matters to him.
Less than 1% of us put a uniform on our back to swear allegiance to a document that we don't even uphold completely here in this country.
Welcome back. Now, is he a talk show host, an advocate, an activist? Let's find out as we continue our conversation with Montel Williams. I say this with the highest level of respect. I wonder how often, and I'm going to ask, when people get a chance to talk to you who only knew you through seeing you on TV or maybe on the movies, how often are people just surprised by all of the things, that you're involved in, or kind of sit back and go, huh? Like, I didn't know, or that's not necessarily what I expected.
I think the latter two, and that's not what I expected, is what I get more often than not. I'm only a talk show host. I'm only a lieutenant commander in the Navy. I'm only a special duty intelligence officer. Never the twain can meet. I was smart enough to get a degree in cryptology and Russian. So why could I not be smart enough to study, learn, and understand other things that to some might seem like they're, higher level? I don't know if they're higher level or just other verticals.
You're already using your voice, but we ask everybody, the use your voice for good is something that we try to do and inspire people to do. What do you want people to do either on your behalf, or what are you using your voice for good at this point? What path would you like people to explore?
I'm still very, very focused on our veterans. I spent a lot of time in the military, and unfortunately, as we sit back here and don't pay attention to what's going on in foreign soil, it might not be too long before we have U.S. bodies on the ground in a foreign country. Who knows? But at the end of the day, we have to remember that less than 1% of us put a uniform on our back to swear allegiance to a document that we don't even uphold completely here in this country. And those that serve, some end up leaving body parts behind for us so that our children or our children's children or our cousins and aunts and uncles and parents don't have to leave their body parts behind. So I think it's a tremendous sacrifice that someone would make nowadays, especially a person of color.
Yeah.
Incredible sacrifice to go out and support something that they know that here in America, we don't even give the same credence to that we claim to for someone else. I very adamantly support our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Marines, I don't care what color they are. They all wear uniforms of blue or green or some shade of green. And not one of them looks at the other person in the foxhole or looks at the other person in the tank or looks at the other person and goes, damn, I wish that wasn't a black person there. Not while rockets, red glares are coming in. That's why I do a show right now. It's called Military Makeover. And Military Makeover airs on Lifetime every Friday morning, I think at 8:30. It's a show where we take deserving veterans and we rebuild their homes from the ground up and give them a forever home.
This has been a really interesting, and I will be one of those people who says unexpected in a positive way kind of conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. You get the last word. What do you want to leave our viewers with?
I would say that if there was one thing that I think I'd love to leave with people is that thought that I gave you earlier, which was a thought that all of us can have. Before we lay our heads down and go to sleep at night, I like to play a little game with myself. And that game is I ask the question, what did I do today that's worth talking about tomorrow? If you can't come up with something, get busy.
So thank you so much for watching The Pulse today. I have to admit to you, I was even surprised by some of the stories that Montel Williams shared with us, his depth of knowledge, his diversity, but I'm glad we took the time to talk to him, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And remember, whenever you can, use your voice for good. We'll see you next week.